Ben, allow me to be silly for just a moment. Not silly to me, but it might be silly to other people. Clearly, I'm very religious, unapologetically. One of my heroes is the ancient apostle Paul in the New Testament. Just let me go on for just 30 seconds. I promise. It has a point. I love Paul. He was super strong in his wording, didn't suffer fools, my kind of guy. I just told it how it is. He said in one of these scriptures that he was kind of prophesying of the latter days, our days, I would say. And he said one of the signs of the latter days is that people will command to abstain from eating meat. I mean, this was an explicit verse in 1 Timothy chapter 4 for anyone who wants to flip open the Bible. Go read 1 Timothy chapter 4. And it is so compelling. And so as a religious guy, I look at this and think, oh man, all of these calls that go on every level, every celebrity, every medical entity, every university, every, apparently educated individual is saying, don't eat meat, don't eat meat, don't eat meat. And I think about the Apostle Paul, almost 2,000 years ago, looking at this and saying, boy, I see that happening. And it's not good. Like he calls it, he said that it's people who've been seduced by the spirits of devils. Now, I'm not going to go that far.
Well, it starts about 150 years ago, crazy enough, with the Seventh-day Adventist Church, which is very, very strange. And a lot of this, most of this is coming from the work of Belinda Fettke, who's the wife of Dr. Gary Fettke, who's a Tasmanian orthopedic surgeon. And she really broke the case open on why in God's name we are having this shoved down our throats for so long. So Ellen G. White was a prophetess, and she had so-called vision from God. And she was told that meat was evil, meat caused lustful feelings, it increased sexual urges, and of course lust was a sin. And so therefore meat was a sin. And it was as bad as smoking and drinking and all these other sorts of substances. And so and it caused you, it caused you to feel in a lustful way, and this was bad. She was influenced by Sylvester Graham of Graham Crackers, who also advocated for a bland diet to suppress sexual urges. And this was in their writings, specifically was to suppress sexual urges because sex was evil. And also this was part of the temperance movement as well. So talking about self-vice, which is masturbation. This was thought to be one of the greatest sins you could commit against yourself. And she wrote a book called An Appeal to Mothers, where she said that if your child masturbates, it's like putting a gun to his breast and pulling the trigger. They're just dead on that instant. And so they took this very seriously. And one of her little proteges was a guy named John Harvey Kellogg. And he was her typesetter when he was 12 years old and set the type for these books that she was writing. So he was ingrained in this. And you might recognize the name, grew up to become Dr. Kellogg. And he and his brother founded Kellogg Cereals. And he invented Kellogg cereals while he was the director of the Battle Creek Sanitarium in Michigan in order to give food that would suppress sexual urges and desires. That was his mission. He also would see parents who would bring in their children who were masturbating and wanted to stop them. He'd put them on a vegan diet, put them on a plant-based diet, give them a bunch of these cornflakes in order to suppress their sexual urges. And he would also circumcise them without anesthetic. Boys and girls. He would actually cut the clitoris off of girls. Or use acid or other caustic substances to scar and score the clitoris and labia to make it painful to them and punish them and to make it painful for them to do it again. And he actually pushed this on the rest of the country. He thought this was a very helpful thing. He convinced the medical establishment in America to push for male circumcision. He tried it for female circumcision, saying this was better for their health. He didn't tell them what his actual motives were, which was to suppress masturbation. But that's what it was. And so he convinced the medical establishment that it was actually in the health of the child's, in the best interest of the child, to circumcise young boys. And this is why most Americans are circumcised. It's starting to change because people have become aware of this more recently. He tried to do it for women too. He thankfully didn't get through with that one, but this is where these people's minds were at. So the Seventh-day Adventist Church has actually set up more than 20 different plant-based food companies. They are the origin of the processed food movement. So Kellogg and his brother made cornflakes and a lot of other different sorts of cereals that came along with this. There was something like 36 different cereal companies came up around Battle Creek, Michigan during this time because they're all influenced by Kellogg. Kellogg's was an extremely influential doctor and scientist in America. He was sort of a doctor to the stars. Back in the 1800s, early 1900s, presidents and movie stars and politicians would come to see him at his sanitarium in Battle Creek. And he was extremely influential. He really pushed his case very hard. He had a lot of very strange predilections, like enemas. He always put everyone on enemas. He gave himself 2 enemas a day. He had a high-powered machine that could pump in 60 liters of water in and out of the rectum in less than a minute. So he would do this. He thought this was part of good health, and then being on vegan. So he had very peculiar, very unique sort of thoughts. But he was very influential, and so a lot of other cereal companies came up as a result of this. One was Sanitarium Foods here in Australia. It's one of the larger food producers, processed food producers in Australia. They are still owned by the Seventh-day Adventist Church. They still benefit from tax exemption status because they're part of a religious organization, and their mission statement is to push a plant-based agenda for this religious ideology. They don't tell you that, but that is what it is. And they say, oh, it's for healthful, this, that, and the other, and blah, blah. No, it's not. It is to stop you from being horny, basically. So how they influenced our diet. Okay, so that's the origin of the processed food industry. But they've had so much more influence since then. We know now that they've had undue influence on most of the major dietary guidelines and decision-making processes of the last century. And in fact, it gets worse than that because the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics in America was actually founded by the Seventh-day Adventist Church members. So the entire field of nutritional sciences and dietetics was founded by these people who are religiously anti-meat. So it's always been about plant. This is why when I grew up next to a nutritional college, one of the top nutritional colleges in America called Bastyr, everyone coming out of there was just whole food vegan, whole food vegan, whole food vegan. And I knew that was insane because we're apex predators. Apex predators definitionally eat animals. And so I knew that was silly, but I never thought wait, why and how are PhDs in nutrition being taught that we're supposed to only eat plants when they're deficient in nutrients? And we clearly evolved on meat. Now I know why. Because they were founded by the Seventh-day Adventist Church, the Adventist Nutritional and Dietetics International Association. These are very influential around the world as well. Loma Linda Medical School and University and Medical Center was, again, a Seventh-day Adventist church. When I was applying to medical school back in 2008, I remember I was living in California at the time, and I was looking around the different California schools, and I came across Loma Linda, and I said, okay, who are these guys? I was not even allowed to apply. It says, in order to apply, you must be a member of the Seventh-day Adventist Church. You can't even apply. You have to get a letter from your deacon in order to apply. So that's who they are. But then you have the McGovern